The following program is sponsored by Goldline.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first in a series of Blaze specials about a topic we all know and love, money.
The best things in life are free. Now give me money, 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 money. That's what I want.
I'm Amy Holmes, and for the next 30 minutes, we're going to take a journey into the history of cold, hard cash, from barter to Bitcoin and beyond. But first, it might be helpful to understand what money is. Simply defined, money is something used in exchange for goods and services, which today means banknotes and coins, but throughout history, all kinds of things have been used as currency. Shells, stones, rare spices, pelts, livestock. Heck, even the cocoa bean had its day in the sun as a coveted bargaining chip. The point? Well, money is what we say it is, so long as everybody agrees on its value. And as I'm sure you can imagine, in our country, the story of currency is both complicated and fascinating. To learn a little more about America's economic journey, from seashells to C-notes, we took a trip into the heart of the financial capital of the world, Wall Street. I'm here with Chris Myers, who's the Director of Education at the Museum of American Finance. And Chris, you know all about money.
You know, the interesting thing about money is that it's a really abstract concept, and it's a lot of things at the same time. But the most important thing is that people have to agree on what it is.
So you're telling me that our first American settlers, when they arrived here in the New World, they used beaver pelts and seashells to trade with Native Americans?
That's true.
So Chris, when did we move into using coins and paper?
Coins have been around for a long, long time. When Alexander Hamilton comes along and he establishes the mint and creates American money, right? So the most common form of cold, hard cash or money were coins. Those were explicitly came from the government. They represented a specific weight of silver or gold or copper or whatever was used.
And they had those real materials in them. I mean, that was real silver, real gold.
Exactly, 100% intrinsic value.
I found this fascinating, that in our early history, private banks issued their own pieces of paper, and it could be 20 different bills that Americans were using to trade with one another. When did we pull it all together and just have what you and I understand to be a United States $1 bill?
Well, the national currency was established around the time of the Civil War. This is also the period in which we go from having individual banks backing their individual notes to having the United States government backing those notes.
And how important was that for bringing together the United States, for bringing together the Union?
I mean, it's very important, especially after the Union. I mean, when you think about the divisions in the nation after the Civil War, not only was there animosity, yes, but, you know, the currency prohibits you from buying goods. And by having one national currency, you could be a citizen anywhere in the country, and you could go north, south, east, west, and use that explicit promise that that one note anywhere in the country was valid and genuine and represented a firm promise by the government.
During the Depression, this kind of fell apart. I mean, we had the stock market crash. Tell me about that.
When you are uncertain about the future, you're going to be more likely to save your money than to go out and have a steak dinner. And so when the Great Depression comes along and people become concerned about their future, one of the first things that they do is they go down to the bank to make sure that they have enough, cash to pay their bills. And so what the government did is the government had to step in and block that relationship between a specific piece of paper and a specific weight of gold or silver.
So Chris, explain how it is that currency was tied to actual precious metals and then wasn't.
The paper is not what's important. What's important is the gold. And the paper is merely a substitute for the gold.
That was the old promise.
That was the old one, right?
So what is the case now?
So that explicit promise that we just talked about between the piece of paper and a specific weight of gold or silver or a coin, okay, cold hard cash, that explicit relationship ends. So it was completely broken around the 1970s. So President Richard Nixon ends the gold standard in the 1970s.
What were the largest denominations in dollar bills that used to be available?
There's a whole series of notes that are referred to as large denomination notes, starting with the 500, 1,000, 5,000, and the largest note that people like you and I could put in our wallets was the $10,000 bill. Those were also done away with in the 70s as well. The highest denomination today is the $100 bill.
Fascinating. So do you think that we're even going to use physical money in the near future?
I would definitely say the trend seems to suggest that we may not. I think it's going to be pretty hard to do away with all forms of currency and money the way we know it today.
Chris, thank you so much for sharing your time. That was fascinating. The stock market crashed, setting off a devastating downward spiral that spread across every sector of the economy. Initially, investors, big and small, were left with next to nothing.
When demand is high, so is opportunity. There is only so much silver in the world, and over half of all silver produced each year is used in industries that make products like cell phones, cars, and computers. This industrial demand is one reason silver has performed so well, and why some analysts are predicting a future surge in silver demand. Since silver is the lowest priced precious metal, shouldn't you see how silver can help diversify your portfolio? Goldline has been helping people acquire precious metals like gold and silver for over 50 years. Getting started is easy. Just call the number on your screen to receive our free investor kit. Shipping is free. You pay the same price using cash or credit card. And qualifying orders are eligible for Goldline's Price Guarantee Program. Call now to get started, because greater silver demand creates greater opportunities.
We talked about the Civil War and how some unscrupulous individuals took advantage of the chaos. They printed fake money from fake banks, and that led to centralized banking to ensure the authenticity of U.S. dollar bills. Well, leap forward to the Great Depression, and you know what you find? Gold was a key player. The Great Depression, one of the darkest chapters in America's history. Almost 15 million out of work, hunger and despair were widespread, and the future of the nation looked bleak. But in the years leading up to the deepest economic downturn in the history of the Western Hemisphere, most Americans were living the good life, comfortable and confident that the era of prosperity would last forever. It was the age of Edison, Ford, Lindbergh, Hollywood, an entire decade dubbed the Roaring '20s, an era of innovation and industrial growth that showed no signs of slowing down. Then, in late October 1929, on the heels of out-of-control spending, over-optimistic speculation, and declining agricultural industry, disaster struck. The stock market crashed, setting off a devastating downward spiral that spread across every sector of the economy. Initially, investors, big and small, were left with next to nothing. Billions of dollars simply disappeared in a matter of weeks. Once the budding catastrophe hit the country's banking system, the growing panic became even more widespread as Americans rushed to withdraw their hard-earned money. In short order, bank vaults were cleaned out, and without capital on hand to cover the deposits, assets were liquidated to cover the difference. The losses were huge. Eventually, waves of banks began to fail. With the economy teetering on the edge of complete collapse, industrial output began to drop by nearly half. Prices fell sharply, companies shut down, unemployment skyrocketed, a severe recession fully evolved into an historic once-in-a-lifetime global economic depression. Millions of Americans spent hours standing in line for food or jobs, desperate to find anything to help ease the burden.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
By 1932, a hopeless nation scrambles for new leadership and elects Franklin Delano Roosevelt to its highest office. Quickly, the new president begins a radical economic experiment that was part of his New Deal. First on the agenda, suspend the gold standard. Next, restrict private ownership of the precious metal. And finally, end the century-old price freeze. The result would forever change the nation's monetary system and the course of U.S. history. Joining me tonight is Dan Oliver. He's the president of the Committee for Monetary Research and Education. We are also joined by Dennis Neal. He is a CNBC former anchor and former managing editor of Forbes magazine. Gentlemen, thank you. Welcome.
Hello.
So, big question. Was leaving the gold standard helpful or harmful?
It's kind of interesting that there still is a debate historically going on, 50 or 60 years later, and of course it means a lot because of what we've just been through, the second worst meltdown of modern history. But let's just have a little context. Let's remember that from 1834 to 1933, 100 years, gold was tethered at 20 bucks an ounce, that's it. So then FDR comes in and says, look, I need more wiggle room. This tethering it, let's take it off. So they leave in 1933, they get back on it in 1946. And they fixed gold at $35.
So you're saying, hold on, that
I think he did the right thing. They needed they needed freedom and latitude, and that's what Ben Bernanke has done since the 08 meltdown.
Do you agree with that,
Yeah, I
Dan?
totally disagree with that. I mean, the point of money is to have everyone agree on a standard of value so they can trade with each other. There's no reason for money to change its value. What was happening in the Great Depression was that when you deposit money to the bank, as I'm sure you know, in the fractional reserve system, you deposit $100 and the bank lends out $2,000. Right? It sounds crazy, but the way it works is you deposit 100, they lend out 90 of it, 90%. The next guy gets that $90, he redeposits it, they lend out $81, and so on and so forth, and that adds up to $2,000. So what happens in a banking crisis today, is just as much as in the Great Depression, is someone goes and withdraws their money, right? What happens is the banking system has to shrink their loans by 10 times that amount, right? Or 20 times, depending on the reserve ratio.
What do you say to our former Fed chairman, Alan Greenspan,
Yes.
who said that Great Britain leaving the gold standard at the beginning of the Great Depression actually led to this domino effect of bank failures because there was no confidence in what does that paper money mean?
So we're at a time of the worst financial meltdown in global history. The thought that those banks went failure in England because they got off the gold standard. How about no, they were loaned too much money at the wrong terms to businesses that collapsed. There's all hundreds of other forces swirling around.
That takes me to my next question.
Okay.
Civilizations,
Yes.
for time immemorial it
Yes.
seems, have discovered gold as a form of currency. Why is that?
Well, let's talk about that, right? It wasn't because a bunch of kings sat around and said, hey, everyone, let's use gold, right? It was because in the market, over thousands of years, over billions and billions of transactions, merchants discovered that gold was the best form of value, the best way to trade other commodities, right?
Why? Why gold?
Because when you have a certain good and you're trying to get a different good, right? That's what trading is. You can do a barter, right? You can go and try to find the guy who has exactly the thing you want, you have what he wants, and make a trade that's very expensive to find that guy, right? So instead, you trade what you have for something else. And the reason the market always picks gold when gold is available is because gold has the most stable value, right? It's readily identifiable. If you ever held gold coin, gold is 20 times heavier than water is. It's denser, but it feels heavier. So you know it's gold. You don't need some expert to tell you, right? And so all these physical factors combine to make the market choose gold as money, and then governments come along and they say, hey, we want to use paper because paper is more convenient than gold is, for sure it is. So they say, okay, we are going to set our paper money to a certain ratio to gold. So it's not that governments decide what the price of gold is, right?
No, it's
the
people in
opposite.
markets. I'll be darned. So maybe government shouldn't be tethered to one price for 100 years and deciding that that shall be the price. Maybe instead demand and supply. But one other thing about gold, the reason gold has been prized for 5,000 years, beyond just being shiny, is because it's so scarce. You know, 97% of all, or 98% of all the gold ever mined in world history is still in circulation, still in use. And do you know how much total it is? Don't ruin my line. How much total it is if you take all of the gold together mined in world history? It's 3 or 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's all.
Okay, guys, very quickly, yes or no, should we go back to the gold standard, Dennis?
No, not if we want the global economy to grow.
Dan?
Of course, the answer is yes, because what gold does is it establishes a stable value that lets others trade goods, invest. They know exactly what they're trading for, what they're investing for. They know what the return is going to be in stable terms, and that's why gold is necessary.
All right, when we come back, more heated discussion about money.
Bitcoins have a number of advantages. Bitcoins are transferred directly from person to person via the net, without going through a bank or clearinghouse. This means that the fees are much lower. You can use them in every country. Your account cannot be frozen, and there are no prerequisites or arbitrary limits.
When demand is high, so is opportunity. There is only so much silver in the world, and over half of all silver produced each year is used in industries that make products like cell phones, cars, and computers. This industrial demand is one reason silver has performed so well, and why some analysts are predicting a future surge in silver demand. Since silver is the lowest priced precious metal, shouldn't you see how silver can help diversify your portfolio? Goldline has been helping people acquire precious metals like gold and silver for over 50 years. Getting started is easy. Just call the number on your screen to receive our free investor kit. Shipping is free. You pay the same price using cash or credit card. And qualifying orders are eligible for Goldline's Price Guarantee Program. Call now to get started, because greater silver demand creates greater opportunities.
You're watching The History of Currency on The Blaze.
We are back with our monetary experts, Dan Oliver and Dennis Neal. So money, for me as an old person, and polling shows this, I think of it as dollar bills, but for young people, it's just plastic. It's their debit card. What do you think about this, having a cashless society?
Well, I think that, here's the thing, man. I remember the New York Times Sunday magazine ran a page one story on the disappearance of cash. It's like 1985 or 1989. The future always arrives eventually. It just takes longer than we expect. One day we will be a cashless society. But cash has some advantages. And the biggest thing it has is it's anonymity. And when you have it, the government doesn't know that you're spending it. And everything else you do electronically, government knows about.
So what do you think about that, Dan? Do you think having a cashless society is a good thing?
Yeah, I think we should step back and think, where did cash come from, right? Because money, up until fairly recently, was gold. People spent gold, and that's how they transacted the market. And in 1609, a bank called the Bank of Amsterdam opened, and what you would do is you would deposit your gold, and they would give you a piece of paper. And the piece of paper was much more convenient to have than the gold backing it, and merchants preferred the paper, right? Well, now we've reached a level of history where the paper is now inconvenient. People want it in electronic form, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
They want to just use their debit card.
Which is fine, but the distinction is that under the old paper systems, you could get your gold back. So if you thought the bank was cheating you, the way they do, and they print more of these paper certificates and you get inflation, you could run to the bank and say, give me my gold back, or go buy it in the market, right? So I think that cashless society is a great thing as long as you have the option to get out of it and go get the real thing, get the cash or get the gold, right? What concerns me about cashless society is that it's also a way that big corporations and government can control people, what they buy, they can monitor what they're doing.
So explain that, Dan. So if you have your debit card, as we all know, and you look at your account, it has every single transaction you used with that card.
Right.
Can government get in there and see what you're doing?
And if they're watching me, they'd be falling asleep for boredom. But that's not the point. The point is that I can still go take my cash, walk down to the coin store, and trade in for gold. And that gives me comfort that I'm out of the system. I don't have to worry about the Federal Reserve, right? How much dollars they're going to print and how much the government's going to spend. I can get out of the system when I want to. I can hold my savings in gold. I can do my spending with my debit card. And I think that's a nice balance. But my concern is that history shows that governments always want more control, and at some point, the way Franklin Roosevelt did in '33, they will force people into a cashless society, and that can become very tyrannical when all of a sudden you're in the society, you can't get out of it, and they're monitoring everything you do, and then controlling it, saying you can't buy certain things.
How important do you think it is that people be able to get off the grid and use cash, gold-backed or otherwise?
I think Americans in particular are ornery, as hell, and if government comes in and tries to force everyone to do that, cash, paper cash, will become even more precious, and there'll be an entire gray market, and the dollar will be stronger than ever before, because some people will still want to be off the grid. Let's remember that from time immemorial, we have always been willing to sacrifice a certain amount of our privacy to gain convenience. When I pay with my American Express card, instantly someone I don't know knows my address, knows all of those details, but it's a lot more convenient than me having to carry around the cash and have all that money. And so we've always been willing to sacrifice it. And in the era of Facebook, where people are revealing the most personal and embarrassing things, left and right. I don't know that anyone has any presumption of privacy anymore anyway. It already disappeared long ago.
Let's distinguish between voluntary disclosure of your information, right, involuntary taking of it. I agree with you. People say the most extraordinary things on the internet, but they don't have to. No one's forcing them to. And that's the distinction I would draw.
Which brings us to Bitcoin. And we have a video here that is made by people who like it.
What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the first decentralized digital currency. Bitcoins are digital coins you can send through the internet. Compared to other alternatives, Bitcoins have a number of advantages. Bitcoins are transferred directly from person to person via the net, without going through a bank or clearinghouse. This means that the fees are much lower. You can use them in every country. Your account cannot be frozen, and there are no prerequisites or arbitrary limits. Let's look at how it works. Several currency exchanges exist where you can buy and sell Bitcoins for dollars, euros, and more. Your Bitcoins are kept in your digital wallet on your computer or mobile device. Sending Bitcoins is as simple as sending an email, and you can purchase anything with Bitcoin. The Bitcoin network is secured by individuals called miners. Miners are rewarded newly generated Bitcoins for verifying transactions. After transactions are verified, they are recorded in a transparent public ledger. Bitcoin opens up a whole new platform for innovation. The software is completely open source and anyone can review the code. Bitcoin is changing finance the same way the web changed publishing. When everyone has access to a global market, great ideas flourish.
Dennis, Dan, you guys sounded very skeptical of Bitcoin. Dan, why do you raise your eyebrows at it?
Well, I thought the video was actually quite accurate in that Bitcoin's advantage is that the transaction costs are very low, right? In this day and age, the idea that the credit card company takes 3% of your purchase is insane, right? The technology should drive that to 0.03%. And so in that aspect of Bitcoin, I actually think it's a wonderful technology. Where I think it goes awry is that it's not a store of value. People actually put their savings into Bitcoin, and that's insane.
Why?
Because it's not based on anything. It is scarce. There's only some, but the asteroids are scarce. There are lots of scarce things that have no value. What makes it valuable, right? I mean, there's no answer to that question. For paper money, it's that you can get the gold, and gold has been a transactional medium for 4,000 years, right? So it's going to continue to be one. Bitcoin, we don't know who invented it. We have no idea. I mean, unless you're an expert, you can't really opine on the technology about whether some, quantum computers apparently don't exist yet, but they will be able to crack these things eventually. So, I mean, I have no idea. I have no trust in it as a mechanism of storage of savings. In terms of transactions, I think it's great.
But Dennis, what about the argument that with Bitcoin, citizens are protected from governments printing dollars and inflating away their savings?
See, this means that Bitcoin appeals mainly to speculators and survivalists, people who think the world's going to end. I mean, exactly how has the government truly been violating my privacy when it knows every purchase I'm making, since most of what I do is, I mean, exactly what is it that we're hiding? But look, here's the thing. In that video we just watched, the last line was, Bitcoin is changing finance the way the web changed publishing. I was with the Wall Street Journal and Forbes for 25 years. The web is destroying publishing, and this will destroy finance. This is nothing but a pyramid scheme. The people who get in early enough on Bitcoin will bid it right up. By the way, it was at $1,150 in November. It's now below $600, but they will bid it up and try to get out. In a pyramid scheme, if you get in early enough and get out and take your money out, then you get away unscathed. But everyone else, if it goes mainstream, this is crazy. By the way, do we even know the identity of the person who invented Bitcoin? We're not even sure it exists. We're not even sure exactly who it is. Do you trust a guy that you don't even know to put thousands of dollars? And one last thing, I'm sorry to rant, but Bitcoin is false, because ultimately you have to convert the Bitcoin back into dollars to get paid. And all of these sellers who are saying, we accept Bitcoin. No, you don't. You require a conversion into dollars. You're taking dollars the way you always have. Bitcoin is just a total ruse.
But Dan, what about the argument that Governments inflate away their debt and they make your savings worthless, and Bitcoin protects you from that.
Well, exactly. That's why I'm in favor of the gold standard, to disallow the government from doing that. But
Is it
but
Bitcoin
there's no
just the
there's no reason why
version of the
Bitcoin
gold
should have any
standard?
value. Why should it be worth $100 or $1 million? There's no anchor to it, which means it's very volatile, which means no one should say their savings in it. No one would take debt in it. But to address one of your points, which I think is very important, is that the libertarians and the survivalists who say, oh, I'm going to get Bitcoin to get out of the government's viewfinder. The problem is that Bitcoin transacts over the internet, and the internet is by its nature a government network, and they can monitor you much more easily than they can cash transactions in your bedroom. That requires a camera and a bug, and they can bug your phone and all the rest of it. Right. I mean, the FBI has all this technology. Go into your laptop, find exactly what you're doing. So the idea that you're actually escaping from the state because you get Bitcoin, I think is insane.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Dan, for a very spirited discussion about what is money. And if you think Bitcoin is strange, what about paying with your eyeball, your thumbprint, or even your DNA? Welcome to the world of high-tech currency. We're at the threshold of a payment revolution.
When demand is high, so is opportunity. There is only so much silver in the world, and over half of all silver produced each year is used in industries that make products like cell phones, cars, and computers. This industrial demand is one reason silver has performed so well, and why some analysts are predicting a future surge in silver demand. Since silver is the lowest priced precious metal, shouldn't you see how silver can help diversify your portfolio? Goldline has been helping people acquire precious metals like gold and silver for over 50 years. Getting started is easy. Just call the number on your screen to receive our free investor kit. Shipping is free. You pay the same price using cash or credit card, and qualifying orders are eligible for Goldline's Price Guarantee Program. Call now to get started, because greater silver demand creates greater opportunities.
Is money real? The dollar bills you use to buy your morning coffee, or the quarters and dimes lost in your couch cushions? Well, some financial experts say that in the very near future, money won't even exist. Welcome to the world of high-tech currency. Wearing your bank account on your wrist, using your fingerprint, or even your eyeball to make everyday transactions. It may sound like a sci-fi movie, but very soon you'll be able to shop like Tom Cruise's character in the futuristic thriller Minority Report, paying for goods with a flick of the wrist or the blink of a computer chip embedded in your contact lens.
How those assorted tank tops work out for you?
We're at the threshold of a payment revolution. At the forefront, Apple Pay, a cutting-edge system that totally bypasses the need for carrying cash. It's available on the iPhone 6 and Apple Watch, and with this technology, all you need is your fingerprint to ring up your purchases. But that's just the beginning of how biometrics are going to make it possible to go shopping in the modern marketplace. Earlier this year at the National Retail Federation's show in New York, Toshiba unveiled what it calls touchless commerce, and it's super cool. It uses 3D and facial recognition to scan your face and then the content of your basket, and then immediately charge everything to your credit card. Convenient? Absolutely. Scary? On so many levels. And if that's not invasive enough, the NIMI band literally gets to the heart of the matter. The patented wristband performs an actual electrocardiogram, or EKG, you've seen those on TV, and it confirms the wearer's identity by mapping the unique electric activity of the heart. Excessive? Maybe. But how far is too far to protect one's valuable identity? That's the million-dollar question, which we'll explore next time at The Blaze. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Amy Holmes, reporting from New York City.
The best things in life are free. You can keep it for the birds and bees, not give me money. That's what I want.